Doing good.
Hi, Professor.
Hello, hello. We'll give a few more minutes for your other classmates to join. Then we can begin our own discussion. Today, as I had mentioned, we're going to have the opportunity to break up into smaller groups through the breakout rooms and Zoom. So we'll begin discussing the prompt in a few minutes after I've checked in a few more of your classmates. While I wait and while I admit some students, are there any questions from any of you, class related or otherwise, that we could possibly help you with? No? Alrighty. Well, it looks like the participant room seems like we've admitted as many folks as have been in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started now. So for today, what I wanted to do was to begin discussing part of chapter 2, which you all had available to read for this week. And the chapter is about short-term and long-term plans, right? And so today, what I want us to have the opportunity to do is to discuss the prompt that I have available for you, which is, what are the uses for having short-term and long-term plans, and what resources at UCSB do you think that will be of use to you in your planning, whether it's short-term or long-term? Now, I'll paste this prompt when you get into your conversation breakout rooms. I'll go ahead and send it through the chat so that everybody has it available. You don't have to worry about writing it down word for word right now. But I want you to begin thinking about, you know, um, setting some of these plans, right? What would that require? And to be honest with you, you've all done this to some extent or another as transfer students, right? As college students, you had to prepare. Some things were more immediate than others. And the transfer process, right, is part of that longer term planning that you had to go through in order to become a student at UC Santa Barbara. So, think along those lines. And also, what you have available are the website links that I've included at the top of our Gacho space, and the campus resources document that I also listed up there for you. So as you're navigating your breakout room session in discussion, if you're starting to think about, or if you're stuck, trying to think of a resource, you have those already available to you. Just start checking them out and seeing if any of them apply to you. Um, are there any questions so far before we go into breakout rooms? No? Okay.
Professor,
Yes, Rena.
these breaking rooms, I don't know. I mean, you direct us, we can join directly and then we come back whenever it's necessary, or how it works.
I'm going to assign your breakout room right now, and then you're going to have about 10 or 15 minutes in group within that breakout room to discuss the prompt. And I will send you the prompt when you go into your smaller group. That way
And,
you can discuss it. And then after 10 or 15 minutes, I will close the breakout rooms and we will all come back together in the larger class.
okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
No problems. Right now, I'm just scanning through, trying to make sure that I have TAs available in each of the breakout rooms. Um, and so it looks like, okay, alrighty. It looks like we are set up now in order for you to go into breakout rooms. I'm going to go ahead and start moving away, and I'll send you a message right now.
Do you all see the prompt?
Yeah, I saw it pop up.
It popped up, yeah.
Is there a way to still see it, read it in? Or?
I don't see it.
I think the prompt was something along the lines of what's how are we going to ensure the planning our future right in a way that is take care of our mind, body, and soul, right?
It says, what are the uses for having short-term and long-term plans? What resources at UCSB do you think can be of service to your plans, either short or long-term? I'll take a screenshot of that.
I sent it into the chat, so hopefully all of you were able to see it.
Yeah, just wanted to.
Mm.
Who would like to get started?
I'm going to hop right back. I'm going to go check in and make sure that the other breakout rooms have the prompt too, okay? Be right back.
Okay.
Definitely building relationships with people, like networking is huge, right? So like you said, you now know 3 graduate students that are your TAs for this class. But then also, yeah, getting into the advising in your major program. What are you looking at going to graduate school to do?
I want to go to law school, so we'll see where we get from there. But I'm doing English currently to try to fine tune my writing capabilities.
Cool.
We have a little bit of a law school hookup at UCSB, between UCSB and UCLA Law School. There used to be a law and society program at UCSB that would prepare our students in that program to go into UCLA Law School. It might still be worth trying to figure out within your department if there's still any connections. If not, I have some former students of mine that graduated or are enrolled at UCLA Law, and they might be good resources for you too, Zach.
Thank you. I'll definitely look into it.
All right. Sorry for interrupting all.
Oh, it's all good. That's that networking component, right? Like they say, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And
Right. Research shows us that our careers are obtained through our network, and that comes from the college we go to and so on and so forth. So this is just a part of that train.
Definitely. Does anyone else have any thoughts on maybe like why we might want to set short-term goals in addition to our long-term goals?
Yeah, I would say for myself, and I already wrote the journal, talk about the mind, body, soul thing. I mean, the short-term goal is that I know I didn't expect to have to be at school for another year, basically this year. I didn't expect to be living where I'm living, but I'm preparing mentally for, it's going to be a stressful time with probably COVID, politically, my family. So right now it's getting in routine. I'm going to be taking a full load with the classes. So that while it's a little calm right now, the weather's nice. I'm just trying to get that squared away. Long-term plan would be to graduate in the spring. Probably still have to take 2 classes. So I'm one of those, kind of like you, Mario. I've been to a few universities. I'm 25, about to be 25. So I've done it all in terms of that. So I have 1 year worth of school, basically. So I'm trying to get it all in. And then I hope to move to LA and work within the film industry. So networking could be big here.
Very cool. Very cool. What's your major? If you don't mind me asking.
Communications. I wish it was film and media studies, but I don't know. I hopped too late on that. I already took all the prereqs for comm.
Cool. Do you have any thoughts on that, Mario? I'm not.
I was just thinking, does film and media have a minor? Because I
They
know
don't-
that I was gonna say, I know that they have a film and media studies program, like where they actually offer media. Like people show up to campus. In the past, we had folks like Chuck D from Public Enemy that showed up and talked
Nice.
about, you know, certain projects they were affiliated with that had to do with like social justice movements, right? And so if they don't have a minor, what I'm thinking is, you know, and you probably have already done this, is trying to find a way into some of what film and media studies does in their programming, because that might be a way for you to get networked back into folks with LA, like Carsey Warner, those folks, I believe, are big alumni contributors to UCSB. So there's, you know, they have that center named after them because of their financial contribution, but they're part of that network. You know, they want our students to be a part of their creations because they understand the quality of professional development you've received before, you know, joining them to whatever capacity. So you're right, you know, with thinking everything you're thinking. I just encourage you to kind of sneak your way around and try to find a way to get plugged into film and media somehow.
Yeah, I appreciate that advice. I guess if that's not going to be my major, I could be more of like a fanboy in that, trying to figure out what kind of internships I could potentially get, who I have to hit up.
Well, you know, don't think of it as being a fanboy, so to speak, as much as saying, you know what, I might not be able to get into your full major, but that doesn't mean that I can't get any training or obtain any learning information from you to any capacity, right? Because part of it is classroom knowledge, and then there's the application to it. So what you might be taking communications could have a way that you could shift it into film and media industry.
Sure.
And then this is your connection into finding that bridge.
Right on, man. I appreciate the tips.
No problem. I'm gonna move over into another breakout room and give you all a little bit more space to hold your conversation. This is great stuff so far. Uh-oh, I'm back. Don't get quiet. Don't get quiet. It's like what my kids do when I show up in the room. So it's like, shh.
Damn.
We were talking about some good stuff about like the importance of planning and how short-term plans can lead to long-term. Is it Amela? I
Yeah.
feel like she brought that up and we sort of rolled off of that. And then Panda calendars too.
What calendars?
I'm using a Panda calendar where, you know, every week, month, and day you reflect on goals that you've met, you know, or what you could be doing differently, right, to
Right.
better achieve it.
That's reflexivity every day, right? It's like
Right.
you're reflecting and acting on it. And that's a good point. Like I mentioned to the last class, I have this big whiteboard that I got at Costco, and like the top third of it, I turned into like a weekly schedule thing, where I use my my dry erase markers and I just adjust the schedule. But then I have long-term goals on the bottom half, And then on the other remaining portion that I leave open, sometimes I just fill them in with motivational quotes or like song lyrics or just something that I need to remind myself, right? Like when I was going through grad school and I was in that last year, I actually drew a little a little picture of a carrot, right? And I was like, this is Bugs Bunny's carrot, right? And you're chasing yours. And my carrot was my PhD, my finishing my dissertation to file it and becoming a doctor. So just like little random notes to motivate, encourage, provide some light humor in the time of stress and anxiety, right? That's what these lists can be good for. They're kind of like these, as you mentioned, Martin, they're like almost immediate data that you can turn into application, right? Like just last week, I went through the same schedule and I messed up because I didn't account for this much work for this area. So now this week, I'm adjusting, give myself 2 extra hours to get that done, right? And by the way, that was a conversation I had with myself last week after our 2 lectures, because you know you just kind of have to figure out what the student needs and the discourse is going to be like. So you know, even from transfers and transitioning all the way through into your post student life, this is all stuff that you can still use and apply. What are some of your other techniques? What are you all doing?
I actually do yoga. It really helps out and keeps me like motivated. It keeps me like refreshed in a way, like so it keeps me like pushing through and keep on going.
That's good. Yoga's good.
Yeah, I
And I'm
agree. I think sometimes I do yoga, but I usually just like walk outside. But I think it's important to just like dedicate like a time out of your day to just rest and like not focus on things like deadlines or anything like that.
there's days where my kids wake me up around 6:30, and I used to complain about it because you know it's too early. But then I started realizing that they're actually kind of hooking me up because I could get stuff done a little sooner. And one of those things that it's gotten into my routine is um, not necessarily yoga or any kind of an intense, but even just stretching. Like even if I just take 10 or 15 minutes in the morning to stretch, and what that does is it induces some breathing techniques, right? Like you start to stretch, it starts to get your breathing going. And so after, you know, a couple of years with the first 2 little ones, it's been much more routine. And you know, I'm getting older now, so it just has to be a part of my daily practice and a priority. So you know, it's just one of those things where you learn to appreciate even just 10 or 15 minutes, right? So if you can just plan in your daily schedule, right? And it could be something as simple as in the first year of transitioning to UCSB, I want to be able to try a different rec centric course every quarter, right? And then allowing yourself to like join, you know, maybe salsa one quarter, maybe some kind of martial arts the next quarter, right? And just trying the full breadth of what you have available to you. But at the same time, it's like you're not just working out, right? And for some of us, the idea of like, I have to go work out versus getting physical activity in any regard, right? Much, let alone martial arts or like dance class, right? That they'll hit you. So it's they have aerobics, they have all sorts of cool things. Under normal circumstances, I know there's like camping trips and that kind of stuff that are offered through the UCSB RecCen. So you know, there's a ton to be able to sort through, but also plan for, right? So you know, I had friends that did the intro to salsa class with the rec center, and they were in graduate school, and so they started early. But by the time they got their PhDs, they were like doing these national salsa competitions, and these people were like personally motivated, right? And it was their balance. It's how they kept balance from the research intensity, the job market search, and all the other minor stressors in their day, you know, they were able to kind of use that as a release. But they also had to stretch. They also had to, at one point, we had a massage therapist on campus through student health. And so the kind of competitions they're going through are rigorous, just like you would imagine, right? An athlete needing some kind of a massage therapy, they were also utilizing these services. And it just kind of made me understand that the way that I deal with my stress is different from others. But, you know, if I'm going to throw around, you know, lift weights for an hour, hour and a half, somebody could be doing just as intense of an activity like dancing for an hour, hour and a half. And, you know, we both are doing what we need for our bodies in that moment, right? It's as intense, if not more so, for one or the other. But, you know, you're not limited in options is what I'm trying to say, right? And so that's what planning can help with, understanding the options that you have. Sometimes a short-term plan will inevitably seem like you should probably change it into a long-term plan, right? And maybe sometimes it's for the best. You know, for me, if I were to say I want to lose, you know, 70 pounds in 4 months, it's probably best if I make that into like a longer goal, right? Like ease my way into the capacity of being able to maintain whatever weight loss I do manage, right? And so for me, understanding that there are people that can do that and keep it off, sure, but I'm not one of them, right? So I have to be honest with myself and my planning. And that's part of what I want you to also kind of understand. Sometimes when we're honest to ourselves, we end up realizing we're not prepared, and then that becomes stressful. But you're not alone, and you have a built-in network, student services that surround you with these resources, right? ONDAS, the Transfer Student Center, EOP. Later on, you'll hear from the director of ONDAS and Transfer Student, and it'll be a conversation that these conversations, I want you to use them as a means to personalize your transition into UC Santa Barbara. These people are already doing larger orientations that you all have probably attended already or will be attending shortly. But our classroom is more intimate. You can ask them a direct question, and hopefully it's not as large as it would be at this orientation meetings, right? And so just given that space, you should feel more comfortable with seeking assistance when you feel like, shoot, I'm not prepared, I'm not ready. Okay, it's all right for you not to be prepared. It's okay for you not to be ready. There are people there that can help you through that moment of stress and help you focus on preparing yourself to be ready. Because that's what we do as a larger community at UCSB. We don't just get you ready to be graduate researchers and then faculty and or professional researchers. We also want you to be productive members of your communities, right? So we can have folks that are part of the Nobel laureate STEM side of our campus, but they're also promoting nonprofit organization with educational tools that they go around to local schools to promote, right? And that's stuff that you can turn from professional to personal, right? Your personal successes can then, your professional successes can then turn into personal stories for other people to build from, right? And so here you have an opportunity of using, for instance, this breakout room to create some friends that can help you get through these short-term and long-term goals, right? You're going to take classes, maybe together. You might major, same stuff, or you might end up working for the same departments. You guys will help each other out through these processes. So, you know, just don't think you're limited. Think you still have options. Does anybody have any questions here before I check out to the other breakout room? Make sure that they're taking care of business. I say that playfully, by the way. Don't tell my TAs. All right, Bertina, check in with your group in a bit.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All on their iPhones going like this. Or on the phone, some stuff like that.
He's here. Ask him.
Oh, Mario, I was curious. So I know for other classes, can the professor or the host, can they see private messages to other students?
Private messages between students?
Yeah.
No, I can't. So like if you're talking shady stuff about me behind my back with another student, I can't.
No, I was thinking about if I was to say, hey, Matthew, Mario's so handsome. He goes,
Oh.
LOL, I agree. So I was just curious because
I can't.
Okay, that's good to know. In another class, I know a girl. We already knew each other, and I said something, and she goes, LOL, like the professor can see all these messages. And then I started thinking, can they? Oh my God. But that's not true.
No, I don't have it set up that way.
Okay.
They might have. I don't even know if there's a way to set it up like that. I just
Being paranoid. 1984.
well, it's
But-
hard enough for me to keep up with the regular chat.
Yeah, exactly. I was telling Matthew, think about the amount of people that would have been fired already by their bosses for like snooze, boring meeting, Shannon's pregnant. No, she's not. Stuff like that.
All right. I accidentally checked into this room, but I'm glad I did. I'm gonna have to go into Jessica's breakout room.
Free comedy.
Are
All
we
right.
gonna-
Y'all got about 5 more minutes or so, all right?
All right.
We'll come back together.
Agree with you. It's a lot different, in person when I get to stare at you in person and ask you things and stare at you in the eyes, and create more awkward silences, things like that. But just finding new techniques to help you study. So I'm glad that the Transfer Center has been helpful to you, Rennie. Emily, you were talking about setting timers, and this is something I suggested in the last class, is called the Pomodoro technique, and it's been a very well studied. There's been a lot of clinical trials for that technique where if you have to do a task that's specifically kind of tedious or something that is like reading, if you have to download and read a bunch of articles or write an essay and that's not something that's super exciting or engaging, you set a timer on your phone, like you mentioned, Emily, for 25 minutes. And then you kind of like intensely work on that for 25 minutes. And then you spend 5 minutes doing something else, something that you might have been doing while you were procrastinating, maybe take a walk around your house, maybe scroll on social media. And the mindset of that is that you're working really hard for 25 minutes, knowing that you're going to get a break and you're going to have that 5 minutes, and that's structure, right? So you can look that up. It is spelled Pomodoro. There we go. And then in the last class, someone mentioned that there's actually a Spotify playlist for that technique, right? So those of you who are more auditory or musically inclined, you can utilize that as a resource. But yeah, it seems like there's been a pattern of students mentioning that it's been a challenge for this virtual learning, and that many of you are seeking other resources like the Transfer Center or outside to kind of figure out what to do and learn about those skills.
Yeah, the virtual transition has been difficult, and I think I came in on you mentioning it also, Jessica, right? Like from the personal sense of our pedagogy, how we interact with students. It's a lot easier to have you all in the classroom and see whatever topics of discussions or lecture notes that we're talking about, and see what we might need to focus on a little longer, right? Like I can just tell from your physical body language whether or not I should move forward or hang around a little bit and ask questions. And that's just a little more difficult to do with Zoom meetings, right? There's folks that for a number of reasons don't have their video, right? And that also can create distractions for some instructors where they go as far as requiring everybody to have their videos on at all times. For me, I don't require it because the way that I understand accessibility, there's also limitations. You might have internet access, but whether or not you're willing to share your actual physical space, it's something much more personal, right? Sometimes, I have children and I have to move from room to room depending on the day in order to have a quieter setting. And that might not be as easily managed for some of you for whatever reason, right? I had a student last session who would Zoom in while they were at work. And I told them not to, but they were so engaged with some of their classmates in their discussions that, they were doing that. They were just, I could sense the real necessity for the social connection, right? Like going as far as being um, a paramedic worker and checking in to your class while you're in work, like screams to me that the person wanted to connect with us and found it as a means to like help them, even as they're processing their professional life, dealing with additional COVID cases and the week in, week out changes. The class somehow provided a little normalcy, and it's interesting because it's awkward, but it still provides a space, right, and a place for us, with video or no video. As long as we have audio communication or chat communication, we can still get along, right? It can satiate us a bit. So it's good that we don't feel limited in that way. It sounds like you all have different techniques for different types of planning, right? I think I mentioned last session with you, Jessica, we did something similar to the Pomodoro method for graduate school when we would do research team meetings, and we would do it was slightly longer, but we had those longer focus sessions followed by short break, and sometimes we would have like those medicine balls at the graduate student lounge, and we would just use those to stretch and roll on and just kind of use that moment to help us with the next 45 minutes of research intensity. But it's good. I think 25 minutes, 30 minutes is probably more effective because we ended up shortening it up long term too to around 30 minutes. You get exhausted much more so, and at the end, what's the real end game to that exhaustion? Is your work the same high quality? No, right? You start repeating yourself, making mistakes that are simple, so on and so forth. But it's good to have a way to manage yourself, right? These transitions from semester to quarter are a big part of the stress factor for some transfer students, and the Pomodoro method is a good way of helping you kind of transition into studying techniques that you might not already have built in before. That's
Yeah.
good.
And I think it's important to kind of really focus on your learning style because not everyone's learning style is the same, right? So if you're someone that is better auditory, right, I know there's some students who are really smart technologically where they have to read essays and papers, they like copy and paste it onto like a site that reads it to you. So they like read along with the auditory as well. And that helps further solidify their skills and things like that. Some people are better with typing, some people are better with writing. So really understanding your own learning style is going to be helpful in this process, right? And I think, go
I
ahead.
was going to say that even for lectures, I think I mentioned to you and Matt in a different class that the texts that I used for a class were available on Audible as well. And that was something that some students had mentioned to me earlier, which is similar to the example you brought up, except it's a professional platform, right? Where
Yeah.
where they have the actual book and someone is reading it, dictating it. I find it useful, like for me in work, because I've read the book, I assigned the book, but sometimes it's easier for me to listen to the book to gain ideas on how to navigate a discussion, right? Like there are books that can work for 50, 60 years in context, right? They're relevant, but the specifics, the situations change. And sometimes just hearing the book out helps me kind of strategize and update my lectures, my notes, and the presentation of the material. So it could be all the way from beginning to conceptualize and learn the material to the other side where you're presenting and preparing that presentation. It's a method that transfers, pun intended. It transfers to other avenues of your life as well. Let me see. Yeah, what is the name of that thing that will read out text to you? Did you mention, Jessica?
Yeah, Emily, I don't know. I'm not as technically advanced. I'm sure you can Google it, and there's just probably something that, like a website that someone created because they are more technologically advanced that they've created that you can just utilize. But I've heard quite a few students like use that, so I'm sure you can find it somewhere on Google.
Cool.
Thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna check out of your breakout room, and then we'll have about 2 minutes before we check back in together. Okay.
Cool.
Great stuff.
Um,
I'll see y'all shortly.
and so
speak so they can give you really specific, tailored, personal, like firsthand experiences.
Yes. Especially right now when we're doing distance learning, I think graduate students it's going to play an important buffer for you as you integrate into your classes, and that isn't to add any additional stress or weight, right, to our teaching assistants, but it's more of an awareness that if students aren't making social connections amongst themselves in these times, their first line of contacts are the teaching teams, right? And if professors um, do not respond because they're receiving more messages more frequently, right? The people that you have most immediate access to in some classes are your TAs. And if not for grade purposes, but that's short term, right? So if you think of your TAs in two capacities, you can see them as short term teaching assistants for your class. Long term, they can be these mentors that you work with that help prepare you to get yourself ready for graduate school. Maybe they help write a letter of recommendation. Maybe they help edit your personal statements for graduate school, so on and so forth, right? They're part of that system. If you ever need a letter of recommendation from a faculty member, oftentimes the teaching assistants help that faculty member in writing that letter for you, because they're the ones that know your work, they know your work ethic, and they know you in a more intimate space. Then the professor vouches for that because they'll take the teaching assistant's assessment, right? Because they're also part of the professional development team, and that's part of the network process you should understand. If you're planning on going to graduate school, TAs are going to be an integral part of you understanding what graduate school is about from their experiences, understanding what resources, opportunities you have available, but also they could be people that can help you find the right recommenders for your application. Right? There's politics. There's little tricks here and there to depending on the program, the types of people you should ask letters of recommendation from. Right? If you're going to a strict research type of a program, they'll want solid ladder line faculty, which are assistant, associate, or full professors. If you're going to like a professional type of a program, an administrator giving you a letter of recommendation could go a long way too. So sometimes they would advise you not to put in like an administrator instead of a faculty for a PhD program. There's just little things like that that graduate students have insight over because they were most recently in the process of researching and filtering the lists of graduate programs for themselves, right? So they can give you that. I went through that process like 15 years ago, right? Your teaching assistants are in the process now, and so they can give you the most relevant information to that capacity. Cool. Let's see who else wants to share with the class. What last class I guess I asked, has anybody have any of you ever encountered short-term plans turning into long-term plans or vice versa? Has that been a situation for any of you?
Something that was mentioned in our breakout rooms was mental awareness, wellness, which I thought was something that I am going for. I think it's a goal that is considered a short-term goal that goes to long-term.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to see it. I think I mentioned it in another breakout room. It might have been yours, but slowly creating these shorter term goals of, twice a week I want to practice fill in the blank, meditation, yoga, stretching. And then long term, it becomes one of those 5 days a week things versus 2 days a week when you began. And so that's how I think what you're describing, that's how it could transition in, right? Where you begin with the shorter goals, and then those help you kind of develop towards the longer goals as well. And that could go not beyond physical, right? When we're talking about mental health too. And for some of us, like I'll use myself for example, I wasn't aware of all the types of mental health resources available. I just, I just understood, there was therapy or counseling. I didn't deal with any of the alternatives that they offer or any of the methods that they teach to help, right, with this maintenance. But rather through time, it's something that has developed. It's opened my mind up to practicing different things. So when I first started going to therapy, it was like, okay, I'm going to try this, once a month. And then once I started going, it was like, okay, I got to be in here at least twice as often, twice a month. And depending on things, it can vary. But just the fact that I'm involved and I have a minimum that I've already set in terms of understanding my body, understanding myself. Like I have to go a minimum of these amount of times in order to kind of maintain regularity, balance in myself. And if not, what are my options for finding therapeutic moments outside of that, right? And so it's a long-term process. It's a lifelong process, right? So again, this is kind of how I feel. You can go from practices to find out the priorities, right? I practiced this, and now I realize that it's something that I really have to do, that it's something that's important for me. So it went from just trying something into, hey, it's the actual priority. Now you do it. It's part of you.
To speak on that, a few years ago, it was suggested to me to get a therapist, and it was a little taboo. I didn't want any of my friends to know, and I thought I'll just go a few times, and I'll tell her how awesome I am and that I'm all good and I don't have any problems. But I began to trust the lady, and my insurance covers it. So at a certain point, it kind of went from like, okay, I'll tolerate it. And now, it's been a few years, and I talk to her once a week. Insurance pays for it, and it's great. And so these conversations we're talking about right now with the long-term goals, short-term goals, those are things that she reminds me of all the time. Having someone to check in. It's not like your roommates want to hear you blab all the time. This person is getting paid, hopefully not by us, to listen and and they're impartial. So anyway, I'm a big fan. So if you guys check out the some of the counseling services through UCSB, highly recommend.
And the cool thing that I learned from counseling services at UCSB was that mental health and counseling services that they offer are offered for like immediate type of situations as well as those longer term ones, right? So if life happens, right, and you're suddenly jolted, you lose a family member or something like that, right? There's immediate anxiety and stress that builds up. It's not something that you were like aware of or preparing for. Even if you were, right, when it happens, it just hits you. And so they're there for that, and they're also there for the long-term management of that grief, right? And so I learned that in that practice, right, they were teaching me that there's minor things that I'm not even aware of, that as long as I'm talking about something, some of the major things that I am focused on, there's someone there that could think outside the box and see outside of what I'm describing. Like after a while, the therapist knew when I was bullshitting them, and I was just in there just answering questions or trying to present a better version of what was actually going on. And at first, I didn't like it. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't like being called on it. I was just like, hey, I'm showing up. That's enough. But it turned into like, is it? Like, why even show up? And we started talking about that. And that was like, that's a part of, something that every once in a while popped up for me. If things didn't go like my way, if I was challenged, I had this kind of a reaction. And I didn't realize it was as big of a deal, right? But imagine if I'm thinking that way with therapy, something that was that necessary, it could be easy for me to follow this method in other things that I didn't consider to be important to me. So my therapist was really good at telling me, hey, don't lose track of this. Maybe this is something that we should continue to talk on later on, but accountability is what I've learned from it, right? To myself and others. I might be in a committed marriage, but there's levels of accountability. And I think that for me, what that means to me and how I represent that is been highly influenced by finding different folks around me to present their options as well as my personal experience within those options. So, everything we talk about in class, network, planning, preparation, self-care, management, right? It'll tend to feel like it's a similar conversation we're having, just a different day, which is good, because after a while you'll start to see how that's maybe the conversation you should be focused on instead of other things that can distract us, right, from this important moment of transition, this important historical moment of living through a pandemic and having to manage create some normalcy through digital platforms and meetings. And it's just, I think it's an option that we need to make more available to us as especially during these times. My nephew's 19, super proud, doesn't want to go to therapy, and every time I convince him, or every time he makes the choice to go, I should say, I could see an immediate change in him for the better for him. He rests more, and that translates to better attitudes, which translate to better decision making for him. And so I think, it's part of the process he's starting to build on too. And I told him I fell into it later in life. So when we talk about this, some of us come from a different perspective. Some of us might have even started practicing some of these skills more recently or later. But the reality is we're all here together now. So it doesn't matter my age. It doesn't matter, that I have a PhD and then you all are incoming transfers. We're all sharing space here together, right? And so that's the moment that I think we should be in. At least, as we have these types of intimate discussions where where we can be helpful with each other and be present with one another as well, right? Well, we've had some really good discussions in both of the classes today. How did you all like the breakout rooms? Were they good practice for you in terms of like, I know it's not like we have 500 people in this class right now, but
You got to give this TA a promotion. This Mac guy, killing.
I did nothing special.
he's on his way. All of our
Please.
TAs are on their way to their own promotion. And trust me, I've worked with your TAs in the past, and Bertin is the first time I work with him. But what I'm seeing and what I've heard from others, you know, you have access to a great teaching team in them. Their expertise as well as their moral character is really something that I'm proud to be able to say, hey, these are the kinds of quality of teaching assistants you have available to you, at the very least from the Gewurz Graduate School of Education, right? So I'm really glad that y'all are having a positive connection with your TAs. I'm going to plan for you to have more breakout sessions so you can continue to connect with them in the upcoming weeks. Cool. Does anybody want to add anything to our group chat before we break for the weekend? No questions, comments? Okay. Sounds good. So just make sure you keep track of readings. I'll have chapter 3 available hopefully by Saturday night is the plan, and then we'll go from there. We'll hold more discussions next week, and then just make sure that you all are practicing safety while you're away in your own space. Wear those masks, social distancing, please. That way I get to enjoy your presence in the remaining classes for this session, okay? Have a great one. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank TAs.
Professor, I have a quick question.
Rina?
It's Ani.
Oh,
Hello.
okay, Ani.
I have a quick question. Sorry. For the journal, how long did you want it to be? Like last time it was like 250, 300 words, or longer than that?
You know, half a page to a page is fine.
Okay.
It doesn't have
Perfect.
to. If you write more than that, that's fine too. If you're around that, that's a good goal.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. Have a great day.
You too, Ani.
Professor.
Yes, Rina.
Professor. So tomorrow I sent an email at 9:30. I will come inside this Zoom exactly in this class, and like today. True?
Yes. Same Zoom
Okay.
meeting ID.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
No problem. Bye, Rina.
Bye.